The rain hammered against the sidewalk like bullets from heaven, each drop exploding into 1,000 smaller pieces as 28-year-old Nadia Johnson hurried down Fifth Avenue. Her nurse uniform clung to her dark skin, and her natural hair was completely soaked despite the hood she'd pulled tight around her face. She was already 20 minutes late for her night shift at General Hospital, and her supervisor would definitely have something to say about it. But what she saw next made her forget all about being late. A tall white man in an expensive gray suit stumbled out of the glass doors of Morrison Industries, one of the biggest buildings in the financial district. Even through the heavy rain, Nadia could see something was terribly wrong. His face was pale as paper, almost gray, and he was clutching his chest with both hands. His breathing came in short, desperate gasps that she could hear even over the storm. The man took 3 more steps before his legs gave out completely. He crashed to the wet concrete with a sickening thud, his briefcase flying open and scattering papers that the wind immediately carried away into the darkness. His whole body was shaking, not from the cold rain but from something much worse. Nadia dropped her own bag and ran toward him without thinking. Her nursing training kicked in immediately as she knelt beside him on the flooded sidewalk. Up close, she could see that this wasn't just any businessman. This was Jonathan Morrison, the billionaire owner of Morrison Industries. She'd seen his picture in magazines and newspapers dozens of times, but never like this. Never looking like he was dying right in front of her eyes. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, raising her voice over the storm. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring up at the dark sky as rain pounded his face. "My name is Nadia. I'm a nurse. I'm going to help you." Jonathan tried to speak, but only a weak groan came out. His lips were turning blue, and Nadia could see that his breathing was getting worse by the second. She quickly checked his pulse at his wrist and found it racing but weak, like his heart was working overtime but barely keeping up. "I need to call an ambulance," she said, reaching for her phone. But when she looked at the screen, there was no signal. The storm must have knocked out some of the cell towers in the area. Jonathan grabbed her wrist with surprising strength for someone who looked half dead. His green eyes focused on her face for the first time, and she saw something in them that made her stomach drop. It wasn't just pain or fear. It was the look of someone who had been living with this for a long time. Someone who had given up hope. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Don't leave me alone." Something about the way he said it broke Nadia's heart. Here was one of the richest men in the city, probably the world, and he was begging a stranger not to abandon him on a sidewalk in the rain. She squeezed his hand gently and felt something strange happen. A warm, tingling sensation spread from her palm up her arm, and for just a moment Jonathan's breathing seemed to get a little easier. "I'm not going anywhere," she promised. "We're going to get through this together." The rain kept falling, soaking them both to the bone, but Nadia stayed right there beside him. She had no idea that this moment would change both of their lives forever. She didn't know about the mysterious illness that had been slowly killing Jonathan for the past 2 years, or about the dozens of doctors who had failed to help him. She didn't know about the healing gift that had been sleeping inside her since birth, waiting for the right moment to wake up. All she knew was that a man needed help, and she wasn't going to let him face it alone. 20 minutes later, the storm finally started to calm down enough for Nadia's phone to get a signal. She called for an ambulance while keeping one hand on Jonathan's chest, somehow knowing that her touch was the only thing keeping him stable. The paramedics arrived 10 minutes after that, but by then, something impossible had happened. Jonathan was sitting up. "I don't understand," one of the paramedics said as he checked Jonathan's vital signs. "His pulse is normal. His breathing is fine. Are you sure he collapsed?" Nadia looked down at her hands in confusion. The tingling sensation was still there, like electricity running just under her skin. "He was barely breathing when I found him. I thought he was having a heart attack." Jonathan stood up slowly with the paramedics' help. His color had returned to normal, and although he was still soaked from the rain, he looked completely healthy. But when his eyes met Nadia's, she saw something new there. Wonder. And maybe a little bit of fear. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I don't know what you did, but thank you." The paramedics wanted to take him to the hospital anyway, just to be safe. As they loaded him into the ambulance, Jonathan called out to Nadia through the back doors. "What's your name?" he asked. "Nadia Johnson," she replied. "Nadia Johnson," he repeated like he was memorizing it. "I'm going to find you. I need to talk to you." Then the ambulance doors closed and he was gone. Nadia stood there on the empty sidewalk, rain still dripping from her hair, trying to understand what had just happened. Her hands were still tingling, and she had the strangest feeling that her life had just taken a turn towards something she couldn't even imagine. She picked up her bag and started walking toward the hospital again, but she couldn't stop thinking about the look in Jonathan Morrison's eyes. It wasn't just gratitude she'd seen there. It was hope. And somehow she knew that whatever had passed between them in those few minutes on the sidewalk was just the beginning. The rain had stopped completely by the time she reached the hospital, but Nadia could still feel the warmth in her hands. She looked up at the clear night sky and wondered what tomorrow would bring. She had no idea that in less than 24 hours, her quiet life as a nurse would be turned completely upside down. But first, she had to get through the rest of her shift and try to forget about the impossible thing that had happened on Fifth Avenue. Try to forget about Jonathan Morrison and the way her touch had somehow brought him back from the edge of death. It was going to be a very long night. Nadia barely slept after her shift ended at 7 in the morning. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jonathan Morrison's face, pale and desperate in the rain. She kept thinking about the strange warm feeling in her hands and the way his breathing had suddenly improved when she touched him. It had to be a coincidence. People didn't just heal other people with their bare hands. That was something from movies, not real life. But deep down she knew it wasn't a coincidence. She was making coffee in her tiny apartment kitchen when someone knocked on her door. Nadia lived in a small one-bedroom place in Brooklyn, and visitors were rare. Her neighbors usually just texted if they needed something, and her family lived 3 states away. When she opened the door, she found a woman in a perfectly pressed black suit standing in the hallway. The woman was white, probably in her 40s, with short blonde hair and the kind of confident posture that came from working in corporate America for decades. "Miss Johnson?" the woman asked. "My name is Patricia Wells. I work for Morrison Industries. My employer would like to speak with you." Nadia's coffee mug nearly slipped from her hands. "Jonathan Morrison wants to talk to me?" "Yes, ma'am. He's waiting downstairs in the car if you're willing. He understands this is unusual, but he says it's very important." Nadia looked down at her pajamas and messy hair. "I'm not really dressed for meeting billionaires." Patricia smiled for the first time. "Mr. Morrison said to tell you that he doesn't care what you're wearing. He just needs 5 minutes of your time." Against her better judgment, Nadia found herself nodding. "Let me put on some real clothes. I'll be down in 10 minutes. She threw on jeans and a simple blue sweater, pulled her hair back into a ponytail and grabbed her keys. Her hands were shaking a little as she locked her apartment door. What could Jonathan Morrison possibly want to talk to her about? And why had he tracked down where she lived? The black car waiting outside her building was the kind Nadia had only seen in movies. Long, sleek, and probably worth more than she made in 5 years. Patricia opened the back door for her, and Nadia slid inside to find Jonathan Morrison waiting. He looked completely different from the man she'd found collapsed on the sidewalk. His dark hair was perfectly styled, he was wearing another expensive suit, and his skin had a healthy color that made his green eyes stand out. If she hadn't been there last night, she never would have believed he'd been close to death just 12 hours ago. "Miss Johnson," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I know this must seem strange." Nadia shook his hand and immediately felt that same tingling sensation she'd experienced the night before. From the way Jonathan's eyes widened slightly, she was pretty sure he felt it too. "Please call me Nadia," she said. "And yes, this is definitely strange. How did you find out where I live?" "I have people who are very good at finding information," Jonathan replied. "But I want you to know that I only looked you up because I need to ask you something very important. Something that might sound crazy." The car started moving, and Nadia realized they were heading back toward Manhattan. "Where are we going?" "To my office. I have something to show you there. Something that might help explain what happened last night." Nadia settled back in the leather seat, trying to process everything. "Mr. Morrison, I'm just a nurse. I don't know what you think I did, but—" "You saved my life," Jonathan interrupted. "And not just from collapsing in the rain. You did something that no doctor has been able to do in 2 years." "What do you mean?" Jonathan was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the city passing by. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and serious. "I'm dying, Nadia. Or at least I was until last night. I have a condition that the best doctors in the world can't identify or treat. My heart stops working properly, my breathing becomes impossible, and the pain." He paused and took a deep breath. "The pain is indescribable. I've had episodes like the one you witnessed at least twice a week for the past 2 years." Nadia felt her stomach tighten. "I'm so sorry. That must be terrifying." "It is," Jonathan agreed. "But here's the thing that's kept me awake all night. I haven't had a single symptom since you touched me. Not one. My doctors have been monitoring me remotely through sensors I wear, and they're calling it impossible. My heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, everything is completely normal for the first time in 2 years. The car pulled up in front of Morrison Industries and Patricia got out to open their door. Jonathan turned to face Nadia directly. I know how this sounds, but I think you have some kind of healing ability. And I need your help. They rode the elevator to the top floor in silence. Nadia's mind was spinning with everything Jonathan had told her. Healing abilities weren't real. But then again, she couldn't explain what had happened any other way. Jonathan's office was bigger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city, and everything was decorated in shades of gray and black that somehow managed to look both expensive and welcoming. Please sit down, Jonathan said, gesturing to a comfortable chair across from his desk. I want to show you something. He opened a laptop and turned it toward her. On the screen were medical charts, graphs, and data that Nadia recognized from her nursing training. These are my vital signs from the past 2 years, Jonathan explained, pointing to different sections of the data. See these spikes? Those are my episodes. Heart rate over 180, blood pressure through the roof, oxygen levels dropping dangerously low. He scrolled to a new section of the chart. And this is from last night, starting from the moment you first touched my hand. Nadia stared at the screen in amazement. The chaotic, dangerous readings suddenly smoothed out into perfectly normal patterns. It was like watching someone flip a switch from chaos to calm. This is impossible, she whispered. That's what my doctors said too, Jonathan replied. But the data doesn't lie. Something about your touch stabilized my entire system. Not just temporarily but completely. I haven't felt this healthy in years. Nadia looked up from the laptop to find Jonathan watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. There was hope there, but also something that looked like desperation. What exactly are you asking me to do? She said. Jonathan leaned back in his chair and ran a hand through his hair. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. I want to hire you, he said, as my personal caretaker. The salary would be 5 times what you make at the hospital, plus full benefits and housing if you want it. All you would have to do is be available in case I have another episode. Nadia's first instinct was to say no. It sounded too good to be true, and in her experience things that sounded too good to be true usually were. But then she thought about her job at the hospital. The long hours, the difficult patients, the supervisor who treated her like she was invisible. She thought about her tiny apartment and her student loan payments and the fact that she hadn't been able to visit her family in over a year because she couldn't afford the plane ticket. And she thought about the look in Jonathan's eyes when he'd begged her not to leave him alone in the rain. I need some time to think about it, she said. Jonathan nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Nadia? He stood up and walked around the desk to face her. I want you to know that this isn't just about my health. When you helped me last night, you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. Oh. And I think maybe you're the answer I've been looking for. Patricia drove Nadia back to her apartment, and she spent the rest of the day pacing around her living room, trying to make sense of everything. Could she really have some kind of healing power? And if she did, what did that mean for her life? By evening, she'd made her decision. She called the number Jonathan had given her and told Patricia she would take the job. Wonderful, Patricia said. Mr. Morrison will be so pleased. Can you start tomorrow? Yes, Nadia replied, surprising herself with how confident she sounded. I can start tomorrow. After she hung up, Nadia sat on her couch and looked around her small apartment. Tomorrow her life would be completely different. She was going to work for one of the richest men in the world, and apparently she was going to help heal him with powers she didn't understand. It should have been terrifying. Instead, she found herself smiling for the first time in months. Maybe it was time for a change after all. Nadia's first week working for Jonathan Morrison was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. His penthouse apartment took up the entire top floor of a building in the Upper East Side, with views of Central Park that made her catch her breath every morning. She had her own suite of rooms that was bigger and more luxurious than anywhere she'd ever lived. But the most surprising thing was Jonathan himself. She'd expected him to be demanding and difficult, like the wealthy patients she'd occasionally dealt with at the hospital. Instead, he was kind, respectful, and seemed genuinely interested in her comfort and happiness. He made sure she had everything she needed, introduced her to his small staff as an important member of the team, and never made her feel like she was just an employee. The only problem was that he hadn't had a single episode since the night they met. Maybe you're getting better on your own, Nadia suggested on Friday afternoon. They were sitting in his living room, where she'd been reading while he worked on his laptop. Maybe whatever was wrong is just going away. Jonathan looked up from his computer and shook his head. I've been sick for 2 years, Nadia. This condition doesn't just disappear. The only thing that's changed is you being here. But I haven't done anything, Nadia protested. I've barely even touched you since that first night. Maybe that's the problem, Jonathan said quietly. There was something in his tone that made Nadia look at him more carefully. He was sitting across from her on the couch, but there was at least 3 feet of space between them. Now that she thought about it, they'd been maintaining that distance all week. Polite, professional, careful not to get too close. You think I need to actually touch you for it to work? She asked. I don't know, Jonathan admitted. But I've been thinking about it all week. That night in the rain, the moment you put your hand on my chest, everything changed. And when we shook hands in the car, I felt something. Like electricity but warm. Nadia remembered the tingling sensation she'd experienced both times. I felt it too. They looked at each other across the space between them, and Nadia could see the uncertainty in Jonathan's green eyes. He was afraid to hope, but he was also afraid not to try. Would you? He started, then stopped. Would you be willing to test it? Just to see what happens. Nadia's heart started beating faster, but she nodded. Okay. What do you want me to do? Jonathan moved closer on the couch, close enough that their knees were almost touching. Maybe just put your hand on my arm? Like you're checking my pulse or something medical? Nadia reached out slowly and placed her palm on his forearm, just below where he'd rolled up his shirt sleeve. The moment her skin touched his, that familiar warm tingling started in her fingertips and spread up her arm. But this time something more happened. Jonathan's eyes widened and a soft gasp escaped his lips. Nadia, look. She followed his gaze down to where her hand rested on his arm. There was a soft, golden glow emanating from her palm, so faint that she might have missed it if the afternoon sun hadn't been hidden behind clouds. Oh my God, she whispered, but she didn't pull her hand away. The glow was getting a little brighter and she could feel something flowing from her into him. It was like warmth and energy and peace all mixed together. Jonathan's breathing had become deep and relaxed, and the tension she hadn't even realized he'd been carrying in his shoulders melted away. His skin looked healthier, more vibrant, and when he looked up at her, his eyes were clearer than she'd ever seen them. How do you feel? Nadia asked softly. Like I could run a marathon, Jonathan replied with wonder in his voice. Like I haven't felt sick a day in my life. Nadia, this is incredible. The glow faded after about a minute, but the warm feeling in Nadia's hand lingered. She slowly pulled her hand back, amazed by what she'd just witnessed. I can't believe that just happened, she said. Jonathan stood up and walked to the window, moving with more energy than she'd seen from him all week. I feel amazing. Better than amazing. I feel like myself again for the first time in 2 years. He turned back to face her, and Nadia was surprised to see tears in his eyes. Do you understand what this means? He asked. You have a gift, Nadia. A real, honest-to-God healing gift. You can do something that no doctor, no medicine, no treatment has been able to do. Nadia was still staring at her hand, trying to process what had just happened. I don't understand how it's possible. Does it matter how? Jonathan asked, sitting back down beside her. What matters is that it works. You can heal people, Nadia. You can save lives. The full weight of what he was saying hit her all at once. If she really did have healing powers, what did that mean for her life? For her future? Could she help other people the way she was helping Jonathan? This is so much bigger than just my job, she said quietly. Yes, it is, Jonathan agreed. But we don't have to figure it all out today. Right now, all I know is that you've given me my life back. And I will never be able to thank you enough for that. He reached out and took her hand in both of his, and Nadia felt that warm tingling again, but gentler this time. Like a pleasant humming just under her skin. Whatever this gift is, wherever it came from, I want to help you understand it, Jonathan said. I have resources, connections, people who might be able to help us learn more about what you can do. But only if you want to. This is your choice, Nadia. She looked into his eyes and saw something there that made her heart skip a beat. It wasn't just gratitude or amazement. It was the way he was looking at her, like she was the most important person in the world. Like she mattered in a way that went beyond her healing abilities. I want to learn, she said. I want to understand what this means and how I can help people. But I'm scared, Jonathan. What if I can't control it? What if something goes wrong? Jonathan squeezed her hand gently. Then we'll figure it out together. You don't have to do this alone, Nadia. I promise you that. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of phone calls and research. Jonathan contacted doctors and researchers who specialized in unexplained medical phenomena, while Nadia tried to remember if she'd ever experienced anything like this before. I used to be really good at helping people feel better when I was little, she told Jonathan as they ate dinner together. If my brother scraped his knee, I would kiss it and somehow the pain would go away faster than normal. If my mom had a headache, she would ask me to rub her temples and it always helped. But I thought that was just normal kid stuff. It wasn't normal, Jonathan said gently. It was your gift, just smaller. Less developed. Maybe it's been growing stronger as you've gotten older. That night, Nadia lay in her comfortable bed in her beautiful room and stared up at the ceiling. Her whole life had just changed again, and this time it felt even bigger than when she'd agreed to work for Jonathan. She had healing powers. Real, actual, magical healing powers. But the most surprising thing wasn't the abilities themselves. It was the way Jonathan had looked at her when the golden light had glowed between them. Like she was precious. Like she was someone he cared about as more than just his healer or his employee. Nadia had never been in love before. She'd dated, but nothing serious. She'd always been too focused on school, then work, then just surviving. But the feeling growing in her chest when she thought about Jonathan was something entirely new. She was falling for him. Art. And based on the way he'd been looking at her, she was starting to think he might be falling for her too. But that was a complication she wasn't ready to deal with yet. For now, she just wanted to explore her gift and help the man who had given her a chance at a life she'd never dreamed possible. Tomorrow they would start learning what she was truly capable of. And Nadia had a feeling that was just the beginning of her extraordinary new life. Over the next 3 weeks, Nadia and Jonathan fell into a comfortable routine. Every morning she would spend 30 minutes with her hands on his arms or shoulders, letting the warm healing energy flow between them. Every evening they would have dinner together and talk about everything from books to movies to their childhoods. Nadia learned that Jonathan had grown up lonely despite his family's wealth. His parents had been more interested in their social status than in their son, and he'd spent most of his youth with nannies and tutors. He'd built Morrison Industries from a small investment firm his father had left him into a multi-billion-dollar empire, but success had come at the cost of meaningful relationships. "I've been so focused on business for so long," he told her one evening as they sat on his balcony watching the sunset over Central Park. "I never learned how to just be with someone. How to have a real conversation that isn't about profit margins or market shares." "You're doing fine now," Nadia assured him. "Better than fine, actually. You're one of the easiest people to talk to that I've ever met." Jonathan smiled at her, and Nadia felt that familiar flutter in her chest. Over the past few weeks, she'd become completely comfortable with him. Maybe too comfortable. She found herself looking forward to their dinners more than she looked forward to using her healing abilities. She loved hearing his laugh, loved the way his eyes lit up when he talked about something he was passionate about, loved how he always made sure she was happy and comfortable. She was definitely falling in love with him. The question was whether he felt the same way. "Tell me about your family," Jonathan said, refilling her wine glass. "You mentioned a brother earlier, but you don't talk about them much." Nadia leaned back in her chair and smiled. "My parents are wonderful. They're both teachers in North Carolina. My mom teaches elementary school and my dad teaches high school history. They've been married for 32 years and still hold hands when they watch TV." "That sounds nice," Jonathan said, and there was a wistfulness in his voice that made Nadia's heart ache for him. "My brother Terrence is 2 years younger than me. He's a software engineer in Charlotte, married to his college girlfriend Ashley. They have twin boys who are 4 years old and absolutely exhausting." She laughed, thinking about her nephews. "I miss them all so much. I haven't seen them since Christmas." "Why don't you invite them to visit?" Jonathan suggested. "You could use the guest rooms here, or I could arrange for them to stay at a nice hotel. Whatever would make you more comfortable." Nadia stared at him in surprise. "You would do that?" "Of course," Jonathan said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Nadia, you've given me my life back. The least I can do is help you maintain your relationships with the people you love." The next morning, Nadia called her parents and invited them to New York for a long weekend. They were thrilled, though confused about how she could suddenly afford to fly them up and put them in a nice hotel. "I got a new job," she explained, which was technically true. "The pay is much better and my boss is very generous about time off." Her parents arrived on Friday afternoon, and Nadia met them at the airport with a car service that Jonathan had arranged. Her mother, Beverly Johnson, was a petite woman with graying hair and kind eyes that immediately reminded Nadia where she'd gotten her compassionate nature. Her father, William Johnson, was tall and broad-shouldered with a salt and pepper beard and a smile that could light up a room. "Baby girl," her mother exclaimed, wrapping Nadia in a tight hug. "You look wonderful. Different somehow. Happier." "I am happier, Mom," Nadia realized as she said it. I really am. Jonathan had offered to join them for dinner, but Nadia had declined, wanting to spend time with her parents alone first. They went to a restaurant in Little Italy, and over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, Nadia told them about her new job. She left out the part about healing powers, of course, but she talked about working for Jonathan and how kind and respectful he was. He sounds like a good man, her father said. But be careful, sweetheart. Rich men aren't always what they seem. He's not like that, Dad, Nadia said, surprised by how quickly she jumped to Jonathan's defense. He's genuine. He cares about people. Her mother raised an eyebrow. You sound like you care about him too. As more than just a boss. Nadia felt her cheeks warm. Maybe I do. But it's complicated. Love usually is, Beverly said gently. The question is whether it's worth the complications. Saturday morning, Nadia brought her parents to Jonathan's penthouse for brunch. She was nervous about how the meeting would go, but she shouldn't have worried. Jonathan was charming and gracious, asking her parents thoughtful questions about their work and their lives, and making them feel completely welcome in his home. Your daughter is remarkable, he told them as they sat in the living room after eating. She has a gift for helping people that I've never seen before. She's made a huge difference in my life. That's our Nadia, William said proudly. She's been taking care of people since she was old enough to walk. Even as a little girl, she could always make others feel better just by being around them. Nadia saw Jonathan's eyes widen slightly at that comment, and she knew he was thinking about her healing abilities. But he just smiled and nodded. I can believe that, he said. She has a very calming presence. Later, when her parents were resting in their hotel room before dinner, Nadia and Jonathan sat on his balcony talking about the visit. I like them, Jonathan said. They're exactly what I would have expected your parents to be. Warm, caring, down to earth. You're lucky to have them. I know, Nadia said. They like you too. My mom told me she thinks you're a keeper when we were alone in the kitchen. Jonathan laughed. Your mother has good taste. They were quiet for a moment, and then Jonathan reached over and took her hand. The familiar warm tingling started immediately, but this time it felt different. Less like healing energy and more like simple affection. Nadia, he said softly. I need to tell you something. Her heart started beating faster. What is it? These past few weeks with you have been the best of my life. Not just because you've healed me, but because of who you are. You're kind and funny and brilliant, and you make me want to be a better person. I know this complicates things, and I know there's a power imbalance because I'm your employer, but I have to be honest with you. He paused and looked directly into her eyes. I'm falling in love with you. Nadia felt her breath catch. Jonathan. I know it's complicated, he continued quickly. I know there are a dozen reasons why this might not be a good idea. But I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is just gratitude. It's so much more than that. Nadia squeezed his hand, and the warm feeling between them grew stronger. It's not just you, she said quietly. I'm falling in love with you too. I have been for weeks. Jonathan's face lit up with the biggest smile she'd ever seen from him. Really? Really, she confirmed. You're the most generous, caring man I've ever met. You make me feel special and valued and like I can do anything. I love talking to you, I love spending time with you, and yes, I love you. Jonathan stood up and pulled her to her feet, wrapping his arms around her waist. Can I kiss you? He asked. I thought you'd never ask, Nadia replied with a smile. When their lips met, the warm, tingling sensation exploded through both of them like fireworks. But this time it wasn't about healing. It was about love and connection and the promise of something beautiful growing between them. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. Wow, Jonathan whispered. Yeah, Nadia agreed. Wow. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about their feelings and what it might mean for their relationship. They agreed to take things slowly, to make sure they were making decisions based on love and not just on the intensity of Nadia's gift or Jonathan's gratitude. But as they sat together watching the sun set over the city, Nadia knew that what she felt for Jonathan was real. It was the kind of love she'd always hoped to find but never really believed existed. And from the way he was looking at her, she was pretty sure he felt exactly the same way. Her parents flew home Sunday evening, but not before her mother pulled her aside for one last conversation. I can see how much you care about him, Beverly said. And more importantly, I can see how much he cares about you. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, baby girl. I know, Mom, Nadia said, smiling. I think this might be the real thing. I think so too, her mother agreed. Just remember that real love isn't just about the butterflies and excitement. It's about partnership, respect, and choosing each other every day. From what I've seen, you two have all of that. That night, after her parents had left for the airport, Nadia and Jonathan had their first real conversation as a couple. They talked about their hopes for the future, their fears about mixing love with her healing gift, and how they wanted to handle their relationship moving forward. "I don't want you to ever feel like you have to heal me," Jonathan said as they cuddled on the couch. "I love you for who you are, not for what you can do for me. And I don't want you to ever feel like I'm only with you because of your money or your generosity," Nadia replied. "I love you because you're you. Because you make me laugh and you listen to me and you make me feel like I matter." "You do matter," Jonathan said, kissing the top of her head. "More than you'll ever know." As they sat there together, surrounded by the city lights twinkling through the windows, Nadia felt a peace she'd never experienced before. She was in love with a wonderful man who loved her back. She had discovered an incredible gift that could help people, and for the first time in her life she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. But she had no idea that their love story was just beginning, and that Jonathan had been thinking about something that would change both of their lives forever. 3 months after their first kiss, Nadia and Jonathan had settled into a wonderful rhythm as both healing partners and romantic partners. Nadia's abilities had grown stronger with regular practice, and Jonathan hadn't had a single episode of his mysterious illness. More importantly, they had fallen deeply in love with each other. Their relationship was everything Nadia had dreamed of but never expected to find. Jonathan was attentive without being possessive, generous without being controlling, and he treated her like an equal partner in every aspect of their lives together. They cooked dinner together, watched movies curled up on the couch, took long walks through Central Park and talked for hours about everything and nothing. But Nadia could tell something was on Jonathan's mind. He'd been quieter than usual for the past week, and she'd caught him staring off into space with a thoughtful expression several times. On a rainy Thursday evening in November, as they sat by the fireplace in Jonathan's living room, he finally brought up whatever had been bothering him. "Nadia," he said, setting down his book and turning to face her, "I need to talk to you about something important." She put down her own book and gave him her full attention. "What is it? You've seemed worried about something all week." Jonathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd learned meant he was nervous about something. "It's about my health and our future together." Nadia's stomach dropped. "Are you having symptoms again? Have I not been healing you properly?" No, Jonathan said quickly, reaching over to take her hands. "My health is perfect. Better than it's ever been. That's actually part of what I want to talk about." He stood up and began pacing in front of the fireplace, something he did when he was working through a complex problem. "My doctors have been monitoring me this whole time, and they've confirmed what we already knew. As long as you're healing me regularly, I'm completely healthy. But they've also told me something else. If you ever stopped using your gift on me, the illness would come back within a few weeks." Nadia felt a chill run through her. "I'm not going anywhere, Jonathan. I would never stop helping you." "I know you wouldn't choose to," Jonathan said gently. "But what if something happened to you? What if you got sick or injured or—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Nothing's going to happen to me," Nadia said, but she could see the fear in his eyes. "You can't promise that," Jonathan replied. "None of us can promise that. And the truth is, my dependence on your gift puts you in a terrible position. You can never leave, never travel without me, never have a life that doesn't revolve around keeping me alive." Nadia stood up and walked over to him. "Jonathan, I love you. Taking care of you isn't a burden, it's a privilege. I want to be with you." "And I want to be with you too," Jonathan said, cupping her face in his hands. "For the rest of my life. Which is why I have a proposal for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Nadia's heart stopped. "Jonathan, are you—" "I'm asking you to marry me," he said, dropping to one knee and opening the box to reveal the most beautiful ring Nadia had ever seen. It was a classic solitaire with a diamond so clear and sparkly it seemed to capture all the light in the room. "But I'm not just asking because I love you, although I do more than I ever thought possible," Jonathan continued. "I'm asking because I want to make sure you're protected. As my wife, you would inherit everything if something happened to me. You would never have to worry about money or security. And more importantly, I want the world to know that you're not just my healer or my employee. You're my partner in every way." Tears started running down Nadia's cheeks as she stared at the ring. "Jonathan, I know this isn't the most romantic proposal," Jonathan said quickly. "I know it sounds like a business arrangement. But Nadia, what I feel for you isn't business. It's love. Pure, simple, overwhelming love. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to support your dreams, celebrate your successes, comfort you when you're sad and laugh with you when you're happy. I want to be your husband, not just your patient. Nadia dropped to her knees in front of him, not caring that her jeans would probably be ruined by the fireplace ashes. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Jonathan's face lit up with hope. Yes, I'll marry you, Nadia said, laughing through her tears. I love you so much, Jonathan. I want to be your wife more than I've ever wanted anything. Jonathan slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then he was kissing her and she was kissing him back, and the warm healing energy was flowing between them stronger than it ever had before. When they finally broke apart, they were both crying and laughing at the same time. I can't believe you thought I might say no, Nadia said, admiring her ring in the firelight. I was terrified you'd think I was only proposing because I needed you to keep me alive, Jonathan admitted. I never want you to feel trapped with me. Jonathan Morrison, Nadia said firmly, I would choose you even if you were perfectly healthy and didn't need my gift at all. I would choose you if you were broke and living in a tiny apartment. I would choose you under any circumstances, because I love who you are as a person. And I would choose you even if you didn't have healing powers, Jonathan replied. Even if you were just a regular nurse who happened to help me in the rain that night. I fell in love with your kindness, your strength, your beautiful heart. The healing gift is incredible, but it's not why I want to marry you. They spent the rest of the evening making plans for their wedding. Jonathan wanted to hire the best wedding planner in the city and have an elaborate celebration, but Nadia convinced him she'd prefer something smaller and more intimate. I want our families there and maybe a few close friends, she said as they lay in bed later that night, her head on his chest and her ring catching the light from the city outside. But mostly I just want to marry you. The party isn't what matters. Whatever you want, Jonathan said, stroking her hair. As long as you become my wife, I'm happy. There is one thing I want to ask you, Nadia said, lifting her head to look at him. I want to invite my whole family to stay here for the wedding week. My parents, my brother and his family. Would that be okay? Of course, Jonathan said immediately. This is going to be your home too, Nadia. You should have your family here whenever you want them. The next morning, Nadia called her parents to share the news. Her mother screamed so loudly that her father had to take the phone away from her. We're so happy for you, sweetheart, William said. Jonathan is a good man, and he obviously adores you. When's the wedding? Beverly asked, having recovered from her excitement enough to talk again. We're thinking sometime in the spring, Nadia said. Maybe April or May. We want to have it here in New York, but we want all of you to come and stay with us for the whole week. We wouldn't miss it for the world, her mother said. Oh, honey, I'm so proud of you. You found your person. That afternoon, Jonathan took Nadia to meet with his lawyer to discuss the practical aspects of their marriage. Nadia was amazed to learn just how wealthy Jonathan really was. His net worth was in the billions, not millions as she'd assumed. I want to set up a trust fund in your name, Jonathan explained as they sat in the lawyer's office. Whether we stay married for 50 years or something happens to me tomorrow, you'll be financially secure for the rest of your life. Jonathan, that's too much, Nadia protested. I don't need billions of dollars. Maybe not, Jonathan agreed. But I need to know that you'll be taken care of. It's important to me. The lawyer, a distinguished older man named Richard Hamilton, smiled at their interaction. If I may say so, it's refreshing to see a couple who are clearly marrying for love rather than financial advantage. Love is definitely the only reason, Nadia confirmed, squeezing Jonathan's hand. That evening they had dinner with Patricia Wells, who had become more of a friend than just Jonathan's assistant over the past few months. I have to admit, I was hoping this would happen, Patricia said when they told her about the engagement. I've never seen Jonathan as happy as he's been since you came into his life, Nadia. Thank you, Nadia said. That means a lot coming from you. Now, Patricia continued with a businesslike smile, let's talk about planning this wedding. I know you want something small, but small, for Jonathan Morrison, is still going to be quite an event. As they discussed venues and guest lists and timelines, Nadia felt a sense of excitement building in her chest. She was going to marry the man she loved, surrounded by their families and friends. She was going to become Mrs. Jonathan Morrison, not because she needed his money or security, but because they had found something rare and precious together. But most importantly, she was going to spend the rest of her life with someone who loved her exactly as she was, healing gift and all. It was going to be perfect. The wedding planning process flew by in a whirlwind of dress fittings, menu tastings and flower arrangements. True to her word, Nadia kept the celebration relatively small, only 60 guests, including both their families and their closest friends. Jonathan's family was more complicated than Nadia had expected. His parents, Robert and Catherine Morrison, were polite but clearly puzzled by their son's choice to marry someone they considered beneath his station. They weren't openly rude, but Nadia could feel their disapproval in the way they looked at her and spoke to her. "Don't let them get to you," Jonathan said after a particularly tense dinner with his parents. "They've never understood me and they don't need to understand us. The only opinions that matter are ours." "I just want them to like me," Nadia admitted. "I want your family to be happy about our marriage. Patricia likes you. My cousin Michael likes you. My Aunt Helen thinks you're wonderful," Jonathan pointed out. "The people in my family who matter are happy for us. My parents will come around eventually or they won't. Either way, it doesn't change how I feel about you." Nadia's family, on the other hand, embraced Jonathan completely. Her brother Terence and his wife Ashley arrived with their twin boys 3 days before the wedding, and the penthouse was immediately filled with the sounds of children laughing and playing. "Uncle Jonathan," 4-year-old Marcus Jr. shouted, running into Jonathan's arms the moment he walked through the door. "Aunt Nadia said you have a pool on the roof." "I do indeed," Jonathan said, scooping up the little boy. "Would you like to see it?" Nadia watched with a warm heart as Jonathan spent the afternoon playing with her nephews in the rooftop pool. He was so natural with children, so patient and kind. She found herself imagining what he would be like as a father to their own children someday. The night before the wedding, Nadia's mother helped her into her pajamas and sat on the bed beside her like she used to when Nadia was little. "Are you nervous, baby girl?" Beverly asked. "A little," Nadia admitted. "Not about marrying Jonathan. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. But about everything else. Being married to someone so wealthy, living in this world that's so different from how I grew up." "You know what I think?" her mother said. "I think Jonathan is the one who should be nervous. He's getting a woman who is going to love him completely, support him unconditionally, and probably make him a better man than he ever thought he could be. You're the prize in this relationship, Nadia. Don't ever forget that." The wedding was held at a beautiful garden venue in Central Park, with a view of the lake and trees that were just beginning to show their spring colors. Nadia had chosen to wear her grandmother's pearl necklace and earrings, and her dress was a simple but elegant design that made her feel like a princess. Jonathan stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, and when Nadia walked down the aisle on her father's arm, the look on his face made her forget about everyone else in the world. He was looking at her like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, and she could see tears in his eyes. The ceremony was performed by a minister from Nadia's childhood church, who had driven up from North Carolina specifically for the wedding. They had written their own vows, and when it came time to speak them, Jonathan went first. "Nadia," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "6 months ago my life was dark and lonely and filled with pain. Then you appeared in the rain like an angel and everything changed. You didn't just heal my body, you healed my heart and my soul. You taught me what it means to love someone more than yourself, and you showed me that I was worthy of being loved in return." He paused to take her hands, and Nadia felt the familiar warm tingling between them. "I promise to love you, protect you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. I promise to support your dreams and be your partner in everything we face together. I promise to never take your gift or your love for granted. You are my miracle, Nadia, and I will spend every day trying to be worthy of you." By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Nadia took a deep breath and began her own vows. "Jonathan," she said, "when I helped you that night on the sidewalk, I thought I was just doing what any nurse would do. I had no idea that I was meeting the love of my life. You have shown me what it means to be truly cherished and valued for who I am, not just what I can do." She squeezed his hands and felt his love flowing back to her through their connection. "I promise to love you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad. I promise to be your healer when you need healing, your partner when you need support, and your best friend in all the moments in between. I promise to build a life with you that is filled with laughter, adventure, and more love than either of us ever thought possible. You are my heart, Jonathan, and I choose you today and every day for the rest of our lives." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Jonathan kissed Nadia with such tenderness and joy that the healing energy between them seemed to sparkle in the air around them. Several guests later swore they saw a golden glow surrounding the couple as they kissed, but Nadia and Jonathan were too lost in each other to notice. The reception was held in a beautiful ballroom overlooking the park, with dinner, dancing, and toasts that made everyone laugh and cry. Nadia's father gave a speech about how proud he was of his daughter, and Jonathan's cousin Michael talked about how Jonathan had never been as happy as he'd been since meeting Nadia. To Jonathan and Nadia, Michael raised his glass. May your love story be as healing for the world as it has been for both of you. But the most touching moment came when Jonathan's elderly Aunt Helen, who had raised him for several years after his parents divorced, pulled Nadia aside during the reception. "I want you to know something, dear," the older woman said, her eyes twinkling with warmth. "I've been praying for years that Jonathan would find someone who could see past his money and his success to the good man underneath. You're the answer to those prayers." "Thank you," Nadia said, hugging her new aunt. "He's the answer to my prayers too." Their first dance was to At Last by Etta James, and as they swayed together on the dance floor, Nadia felt like the luckiest woman in the world. She was married to a man who loved her completely, surrounded by family and friends who supported them, and blessed with a gift that could help people heal. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Morrison?" Jonathan whispered in her ear as they danced. "I'm thinking about how perfect this moment is," Nadia replied. "And about how much I love the sound of my new name." "Mrs. Morrison," Jonathan repeated with a smile. "I love the sound of that too." When the evening finally ended, Jonathan and Nadia returned to the penthouse alone for the first time as husband and wife. They had decided not to take a honeymoon immediately, choosing instead to enjoy being newlyweds in their own home before traveling later in the summer. As they stood on their balcony looking out over the city, still wearing their wedding clothes, Nadia realized that this was just the beginning of their story together. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" Jonathan asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "For choosing me. For loving me. For giving me a life I never even knew I wanted." "Thank you for saving me," Jonathan replied. "In every way a person can be saved." They went to bed that night as Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, and for the first time since they'd met, they made love with the healing energy flowing between them. It was beautiful and powerful and unlike anything either of them had ever experienced. Afterwards, as they lay entwined in each other's arms, Nadia felt a completeness she'd never known was possible. "I love you, husband," she whispered. "I love you too, wife," Jonathan replied, kissing the top of her head. They fell asleep planning their future together, not knowing that their greatest challenges and their greatest joys were still to come. The first year of marriage was everything Nadia had hoped it would be. She and Jonathan settled into domestic bliss, learning how to be partners in every aspect of their lives. Jonathan proved to be a wonderful husband, thoughtful, supportive, and endlessly loving. He encouraged Nadia to pursue her interests, whether it was taking art classes or volunteering at the local children's hospital. But it was at the children's hospital where Nadia made a discovery that would change everything. She had been volunteering there for 6 months, reading stories to sick children and helping the nurses with simple tasks. The staff loved her because she had a natural ability to calm anxious children and make them smile even when they were in pain. It was during one of these visits that 8-year-old Isabella Rodriguez changed Nadia's understanding of her gift forever. Isabella had been fighting leukemia for 2 years. She was a bright, brave little girl with curly black hair and eyes that sparkled with mischief despite all she'd been through. But that particular Tuesday afternoon she was having a bad day. The chemotherapy had made her sick and weak, and she was crying when Nadia arrived for her usual story time. "I don't want to hear a story today," Isabella said, turning her face toward the wall. "I just want to go home." Nadia sat down in the chair beside Isabella's bed. "That's okay, sweetheart. We don't have to read anything. Would you like me to just sit with you for a while?" Isabella nodded without looking at her, and Nadia reached out to gently stroke the little girl's arm. The moment her fingers touched Isabella's skin, she felt something different from what she experienced when healing Jonathan. This was stronger, more complex, like there were layers of illness that needed to be addressed. Without really thinking about it, Nadia placed her full palm on Isabella's forehead. The familiar warm tingling started, but this time it seemed to flow deeper, reaching into places that felt dark and tangled. Isabella's eyes widened. "Miss Nadia, your hand is warm. Really, really warm. Does it hurt?" Nadia asked, concerned. "No," Isabella said with wonder. "It feels good. Like sunshine on the inside." Nadia kept her hand on Isabella's forehead for several minutes, feeling the healing energy flow between them. When she finally pulled away, Isabella was sitting up in bed with more color in her cheeks than Nadia had ever seen. "I feel better," Isabella announced. "I feel like I could run around the whole hospital." Dr. Rachel Park, Isabella's oncologist, happened to walk into the room at that moment. She took one look at her patient and stopped in her tracks. "Isabella? How are you feeling, honey?" "Great," Isabella said, bouncing slightly on the bed. Miss Nadia made the sick feeling go away. Dr. Park looked at Nadia with curiosity. "What exactly did you do?" "I just comforted her," Nadia said carefully. She hadn't told anyone at the hospital about her healing abilities, and she wasn't sure she should start now. But over the next few weeks, Nadia found herself drawn back to Isabella's room again and again. Each time she used her healing touch, Isabella seemed to get stronger and healthier. Her appetite returned, her energy increased, and most remarkably her blood work began to improve. Dr. Park was baffled. "I've never seen anything like this," she told Isabella's parents during one of their weekly consultations. "Her white blood cell count is normalizing, her immune system is getting stronger, and the cancer markers in her blood are decreasing significantly." "Is she getting better?" Isabella's mother, Carmen, asked with tears in her eyes. "It appears so," Dr. Park said cautiously. "But I want to run more tests before we get too excited." Nadia knew she had to tell Jonathan what was happening. That evening, as they sat in their living room after dinner, she explained about Isabella and how her healing abilities seemed to be working on the little girl's cancer. "This is incredible, Nadia," Jonathan said, taking her hands in his. "Do you realize what this means? You might be able to cure cancer. You could save thousands of lives." "I don't know if it's that simple," Nadia said. "It only seems to work when I have physical contact, and it takes a lot of energy. After healing Isabella, I'm exhausted for hours." "But you're doing it," Jonathan pointed out. "You're actually curing cancer with your touch. Nadia, this is bigger than anything we imagined." The next morning, Dr. Park called Nadia at home. "Miss Morrison, could you come in to see me today? I'd like to talk to you about Isabella." Nadia's heart started racing. Had someone figured out what she was doing? Was she in trouble? When she arrived at the hospital, Dr. Park led her to a private office and closed the door. "I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me," Dr. Park said. "Do you have some kind of healing ability?" Nadia stared at her for a long moment, trying to decide what to say. Finally she nodded. "I know how it sounds," Nadia said quietly. "I know it's impossible. But yes, I think I do." Dr. Park leaned back in her chair. "I've been a doctor for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what's happening with Isabella. Her recovery is medically impossible, but it's happening. And the only variable that's changed is you spending time with her. Are you going to report me or ask me to stop volunteering?" Nadia asked. "Report you for what?" "Helping a child get better." Dr. Park shook her head. "I don't care if you're using magic, prayer, or alien technology. If you can help these kids, I want to find a way to make that happen safely and legally." Over the following weeks, Dr. Park worked with Nadia to develop a protocol for using her healing abilities in the hospital. They started slowly, with Nadia spending time with only the sickest children under careful medical supervision. The results were nothing short of miraculous. Tommy Chin, a 6-year-old with a brain tumor, began showing improvement after just 3 healing sessions with Nadia. His headaches disappeared, his coordination improved, and his latest MRI showed the tumor had shrunk by 30%. 5-year-old Grace Williams, who had been born with a severe heart defect that required multiple surgeries, experienced dramatic improvement after Nadia's healing touch. Her heart began functioning normally for the first time in her life. 10-year-old Andre Thompson, who had been paralyzed from the waist down in a car accident, regained feeling in his legs after 2 weeks of regular healing sessions with Nadia. Word began to spread quietly through the medical community about the miracle worker at the children's hospital. Dr. Park was careful to document everything and to make sure Nadia was protected from media attention or exploitation. "We need to be smart about this," she told Nadia and Jonathan during one of their regular meetings. "If word gets out too quickly, you'll be overwhelmed with people seeking healing, and we need to understand the limits and risks of your ability first." Jonathan had been incredibly supportive throughout the process, but Nadia could tell he was worried about her. The healing sessions with the children were much more draining than her daily sessions with him, and she often came home exhausted and emotional. "Maybe you should slow down," he suggested one evening after Nadia had spent 6 hours at the hospital working with 3 different children. "You're pushing yourself too hard." "These children are dying, Jonathan," Nadia said, tears in her eyes. "If I can help them, how can I not try?" "Because I'm worried about what this is doing to you," Jonathan replied, pulling her into his arms. "You're losing weight, you're exhausted all the time, and you cry yourself to sleep some nights. I love that you want to help people, but not at the cost of your own health." Nadia knew he was right. The healing work was taking a toll on her physically and emotionally. But every time she saw a child's face light up as they felt better, every time she heard a parent crying with relief as their son or daughter improved, she knew she had to keep going. "What if we set up some kind of foundation?" Jonathan suggested. We could create a proper medical facility where you could work with other healers and doctors. We could research your abilities more thoroughly and find ways to help you work more efficiently. The idea intrigued Nadia. Do you think there are other people like me? I don't know, Jonathan admitted. But we have the resources to find out. We could fund research into healing abilities, alternative medicine, anything that might help us understand your gift better. That night, as they lay in bed talking about the possibility of starting a healing foundation, Nadia felt a new sense of purpose growing in her chest. Maybe her gift wasn't just meant to help Jonathan, or even just the children at the hospital. Maybe it was meant to be part of something much bigger. I want to try, she told him. I want to see if we can find other healers and learn how to help more people. Then we'll do it, Jonathan said, kissing her forehead. Whatever you need, whatever resources it takes, we'll make it happen. As Nadia drifted off to sleep that night, she dreamed of a world where healing was possible for everyone who needed it. A world where children like Isabella and Tommy and Grace could grow up healthy and strong, where parents didn't have to watch their babies suffer, where love and touch and hope could overcome even the darkest illnesses. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to embark on the most important work of her life. And Jonathan would be right there beside her every step of the way. 2 years into their marriage, Nadia and Jonathan had established the Morrison Foundation for Healing Arts, a state-of-the-art medical facility that combined traditional medicine with alternative healing practices. Nadia worked there 3 days a week, helping children and adults who came from all over the world seeking her healing touch. The foundation had been featured in medical journals and news programs, though they were careful to protect Nadia's privacy and never allowed cameras during her healing sessions. Dr. Park had joined them as the chief medical officer, and they had assembled a team of doctors, researchers, and alternative medicine practitioners who were dedicated to understanding and expanding healing arts. But success had come with unexpected challenges. The demand for Nadia's healing abilities was overwhelming. They received hundreds of requests every week from desperate families whose loved ones were suffering from cancer, genetic disorders, chronic pain, and countless other conditions. Even though Nadia could only work with a limited number of patients, the emotional weight of knowing she couldn't help everyone was crushing. Jonathan watched his wife struggle with this burden every day. She had lost 15 pounds over the past year, and she often woke up in the middle of the night crying about the patients she couldn't save. Maybe we need to take a break, he suggested one evening after Nadia had spent 10 hours at the foundation working with 4 different patients. We could take that honeymoon we never had. Go somewhere peaceful where you can rest and recharge. I can't leave now, Nadia said, collapsing onto their couch. Dr. Martinez is bringing his daughter in from Mexico next week. She has a rare genetic condition that no one else has been able to treat. If I can help her. And what about helping yourself? Jonathan asked, sitting down beside her. Nadia, you're burning out. I can see it, Dr. Park can see it, everyone who cares about you can see it. I'm fine, Nadia insisted, but even as she said it, she swayed slightly from exhaustion. Jonathan caught her and pulled her close. You're not fine. And that's okay. What you're doing is incredible, but you're just one person. You can't heal everyone in the world. But I have to try, Nadia said, tears starting to fall. If I don't help them, who will? That night, Jonathan made a decision that he knew might be controversial but that he felt was necessary for his wife's well-being. He called Dr. Park and asked her to come to their penthouse the next morning. I'm worried about Nadia, he told the doctor as they sat in his home office. She's pushing herself too hard and I think it's starting to affect her health. I'm worried too, Dr. Park admitted. She's been having headaches lately, and yesterday she nearly fainted after a particularly intense healing session. I think her body is telling her she needs to slow down. What can we do? Jonathan asked. We need to limit her healing sessions and give her more time to recover between patients, Dr. Park said. I know she won't like it, but we might need to reduce her schedule to 1 or 2 patients per week instead of 4 or 5. When they presented this plan to Nadia later that day, she reacted exactly as they'd expected. Absolutely not, she said firmly. People are suffering, Jonathan. Children are dying. How can you ask me to help fewer of them? Because I'm asking you to help yourself, Jonathan replied. Nadia, what good are you to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion? What happens to all the people you could help in the future if you burn out completely now? He's right, Dr. Park added gently. Your healing abilities seem to be tied to your physical and emotional well-being. The more stressed and exhausted you become, the less effective your healing seems to be. Nadia looked back and forth between them, and Jonathan could see the conflict in her eyes. She knew they were right, but her compassionate heart couldn't bear the thought of turning people away. What if, she said slowly, what if we found other healers? What if my gift isn't as unique as we thought? This was something they'd been exploring since the foundation opened. They had tested hundreds of people who claimed to have healing abilities, but so far, none had demonstrated anything close to Nadia's gift. We're still looking, Jonathan said. But until we find others, you need to take care of yourself. It was during this conversation that Patricia Wells knocked on Jonathan's office door with an expression of excitement that immediately got everyone's attention. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, but I just got off the phone with a researcher in California. Dr. Susan Kim at Stanford has been studying people with unusual healing abilities, and she thinks she might have found someone. Really? Nadia perked up for the first time in days. Her name is Elena Santos. She's a nurse in Los Angeles who has been getting remarkable results with cancer patients. Dr. Kim has documented several cases where patients showed significant improvement after Elena worked with them. She wants to know if we'd be interested in having Elena visit the foundation. Nadia's eyes lit up with hope. When can she come? Dr. Kim said Elena could fly out next week if we're interested. Yes, Nadia said immediately. Absolutely yes. If there's even a chance that she has abilities like mine, we need to meet her. Elena Santos arrived at the Morrison Foundation on a rainy Tuesday morning, and Nadia liked her immediately. She was a petite Latina woman in her mid-30s with kind eyes and a gentle manner that reminded Nadia of herself when she'd first started nursing. I have to admit I'm nervous, Elena said as Nadia gave her a tour of the facility. I've never met anyone else who could do what I do. Sometimes I wondered if I was imagining it all. Trust me, I understand that feeling, Nadia replied. When my abilities first manifested, I thought I was losing my mind. They spent the morning talking about their experiences. Elena's abilities had developed differently from Nadia's, where Nadia's healing seemed to work through direct touch and emotional connection. Elena's abilities were more focused on cancer specifically. She could somehow sense the disease cells in a person's body and direct healing energy specifically to those areas. Would you be willing to work with one of our patients together? Dr. Park asked during their afternoon meeting. I have a young man with lymphoma who hasn't been responding well to traditional treatment. If you're both comfortable with it, maybe we could see how your abilities work in combination. Both women agreed, and an hour later they were standing beside the bed of 16-year-old Kevin Foster, who had been battling Hodgkin's lymphoma for 8 months. Kevin, this is Elena, Nadia said, introducing the new healer. She has abilities similar to mine, and we'd like to try working together to help you feel better. Kevin, a brave teenager who had maintained his sense of humor despite his illness, grinned at them. 2 healers? Cool. Do I get superpowers when you're done? Nadia and Elena exchanged glances and smiled. We'll see what we can do, Elena replied. They positioned themselves on either side of Kevin's bed. Nadia placed her hands on his shoulders while Elena placed hers over his chest, where the lymph nodes were most affected. The moment they both began channeling their healing energy, something extraordinary happened. Instead of the usual warm golden glow that accompanied Nadia's healing, a brilliant silver-white light filled the entire room. The energy flowing between the three of them was unlike anything Nadia had ever experienced. It was as if their combined abilities had created something entirely new and more powerful. Kevin's eyes widened in amazement. Whoa, I can feel something happening. It's like tiny fireworks going off inside my chest, but in a good way. The healing session lasted 20 minutes, and by the end, all three of them were exhausted but exhilarated. Kevin sat up in bed looking more alert and healthy than he had in months. I feel incredible, he said, flexing his arms and taking deep breaths. I feel like I could play basketball again. Dr. Park ran immediate blood tests and the results were astounding. Kevin's white blood cell count had improved dramatically, and the inflammation markers in his blood had decreased by more than 60%. This is unprecedented, Dr. Park told Nadia and Elena later that evening. Your combined healing abilities seem to be exponentially more effective than either of you working alone. It felt different too, Nadia said. Stronger but also easier somehow. Like the energy was flowing more naturally. I felt the same thing, Elena agreed. It was like we were meant to work together. Over the next 2 weeks, Nadia and Elena worked with several patients together, and the results were consistently remarkable. Children with terminal illnesses showed rapid improvement. Adults with chronic conditions experienced relief they hadn't felt in years, and even patients who hadn't responded to Nadia's healing alone began to recover when both women worked together. But the most significant discovery came when they were working with a little girl named Hope Patterson, who had been born with severe cerebral palsy. During their healing session, something unexpected happened. Not only did Hope's muscle control and cognitive function improve dramatically, but Nadia felt something new flowing through her hands. It wasn't just healing energy, it was knowledge. Information about how the brain worked, what was causing Hope's condition, and exactly how to fix it. "Did you feel that?" she asked Elena after they finished. "You mean the download of medical information directly into my brain?" Elena replied with a stunned expression. "Yeah, I felt it." Dr. Park was fascinated by this development. "It's as if your combined abilities aren't just more powerful, they're actually expanding your understanding of medicine and healing." That evening, Nadia and Jonathan sat on their balcony talking about the implications of what had been discovered. "This changes everything," Nadia said, still processing the day's events. "If Elena and I can work together, we can help so many more people. And if there are others like us out there, we could have a whole team of healers," Jonathan finished. "Nadia, this could revolutionize medicine completely." "There's something else," Nadia said quietly. "Something I haven't told you yet." Jonathan turned to face her, concerned by her tone. "What is it?" "When Elena and I were working together today, I felt something. Not just the healing energy, but something deeper. It was like I could see the future. See the foundation growing into something huge, with healers from all over the world coming together to help people." She paused and took his hand. "But I also saw us, Jonathan. I saw us with children of our own. I saw a little girl with your eyes and a little boy with my smile, and they both had the healing gift. I think our children are going to be part of this too." Jonathan's breath caught. "Children? Nadia, are you?" "Not yet," she said quickly. "But soon. I can feel it. And Jonathan, I think our love story isn't just about us. I think it's about creating a family that will help heal the world." Jonathan pulled her into his arms, and as he held her, the warm healing energy flowed between them stronger than it ever had before. But this time it felt different. It felt like promise. Like hope. Like the beginning of something even more beautiful than what they already had. "I love you, Mrs. Morrison," he whispered. "I love you too, Mr. Morrison," she replied. "And I love the future we're going to build together." That night, they made love with a passion and tenderness that felt like they were creating not just pleasure but actual life itself. And 9 months later, their first child, a daughter with Jonathan's green eyes and an unmistakable healing glow in her tiny hands, would prove that Nadia's vision had been absolutely correct. But that's a story for the next chapter of their extraordinary life together. 3 years after Elena Santos joined the Morrison Foundation, Nadia gave birth to their daughter, Grace Elena Morrison. The little girl was born healthy and perfect, but within hours of her birth, both Nadia and the nurses noticed something remarkable about her. When Grace cried, her tears seemed to have a soothing effect on everyone around her. When she grasped Nadia's finger with her tiny hand, Nadia felt a familiar warm tingling that was unmistakably the healing gift. And most amazingly, when Jonathan held his daughter for the first time, his health monitors showed the strongest, most stable readings they had ever recorded. "She's definitely inherited your abilities," Dr. Park said with amazement as she examined the newborn. "I've never seen anything like it. She's only 12 hours old and she's already demonstrating healing properties." "Is that normal?" Jonathan asked, cradling his daughter protectively. "I mean, are there any risks to her having these abilities so young?" "We don't know," Dr. Park admitted. "Grace is the first child born to someone with healing abilities that we're aware of. We'll need to monitor her carefully as she grows." But any concerns about Grace's well-being were quickly put to rest. She was a happy, healthy baby who seemed to bring peace and calm wherever she went. The staff at the foundation adored her, and patients often reported feeling better just from being in the same room with her. More importantly, Grace's presence seemed to amplify both Nadia's and Jonathan's healing abilities. When the three of them were together, the healing energy that flowed between them was stronger and more focused than anything they had experienced before. "It's like she completes a circuit," Elena observed during one of their team meetings. "When Grace is with you during healing sessions, the energy is more stable and longer lasting." 6 months after Grace was born, Nadia made an announcement that shocked everyone, including herself. "I think I might be ready to try healing Jonathan's condition permanently," she said during their weekly family dinner. Jonathan nearly choked on his wine. "What do you mean, permanently?" "I mean, instead of just managing your symptoms with regular healing sessions, I want to try to cure you completely. Remove the illness from your body entirely so you never have to worry about it again." The idea had been growing in Nadia's mind for weeks. Her abilities had continued to evolve and strengthen, especially since Grace's birth. She was now able to heal conditions that had once seemed impossible, and her understanding of how illness worked at a cellular level had expanded dramatically. Is that even possible? Jonathan asked. I don't know, Nadia admitted. But I think it might be. When I heal you now, I can sense exactly where the illness lives in your body. It's like a shadow wrapped around your heart and lungs. I've been thinking that maybe, with enough focused energy over a longer period of time, I could dissolve that shadow completely. Dr. Park was intrigued but cautious. It would be risky, she warned. We'd need to monitor Jonathan very carefully throughout the process. And there's no guarantee it would work. But there's also no guarantee it wouldn't work, Jonathan pointed out. And if it did, I could live a normal life without depending on Nadia's healing abilities. They spent weeks planning the procedure. It would require Nadia to maintain continuous healing contact with Jonathan for several hours, something she had never attempted before. Elena would assist, and they would have a full medical team standing by in case anything went wrong. The day of the attempt, Nadia was more nervous than she had ever been. Not because she was afraid of failure, but because she was terrified of accidentally hurting the man she loved more than life itself. Are you sure about this? She asked Jonathan as he lay on the medical bed they had set up in the Foundation's main healing room. I've never been more sure of anything, Jonathan replied, taking her hand. Whatever happens, Nadia, I love you. You've already given me 3 more years than I would have had without you. Nadia placed her hands on Jonathan's chest, directly over his heart, and began to channel her healing energy. But this time, instead of the gentle, soothing flow she usually used, she focused all of her power on the dark shadow she could sense wrapped around his organs. Elena positioned herself at Jonathan's head, adding her own healing energy to Nadia's. Dr. Park and her team monitored every aspect of Jonathan's vital signs while Grace slept peacefully in a crib beside the bed, her presence adding to the healing energy in the room. For the first hour, everything proceeded normally. Jonathan's vital signs remained stable, and Nadia could feel the healing energy working its way deeper into his body than it had ever gone before. But during the second hour, something extraordinary began to happen. The shadow that Nadia had always sensed around Jonathan's heart and lungs began to dissolve. Not just fade or weaken but actually break apart and disappear completely. She could feel it leaving his body like smoke being drawn away by a powerful wind. Something's happening, she told Dr. Park without breaking her concentration. I can feel the illness leaving him. Jonathan's monitors confirmed what Nadia was experiencing. His heart rate, which had always been slightly irregular even during good periods, suddenly became perfectly normal. His breathing deepened and became more relaxed. Even his skin color improved, taking on a healthy glow that no one had seen since before his illness began. By the third hour, Nadia felt the last traces of shadow disappear from Jonathan's body. The healing energy between them shifted from the intense, focused power she had been channeling to something softer and more celebratory. It's gone, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Jonathan, it's completely gone. Jonathan sat up slowly, guided by Dr. Park, and took a deep experimental breath. Then another. Then he stood up and stretched his arms over his head. I feel. He paused, searching for the right words. I feel normal. Actually normal for the first time in 5 years. The medical tests confirmed what they all already knew. Jonathan's blood work was perfect. His heart function was normal. His lung capacity was better than it had been since college. Most importantly, there was no trace of the mysterious illness that had been slowly killing him for years. This is medically impossible, Dr. Park said, reviewing the test results for the third time. According to every scan and blood test we've done, Jonathan is now completely healthy. Not just symptom-free but actually cured. How do you feel? Nadia asked, still not quite believing what they had accomplished. Like I could run a marathon, climb a mountain, swim across an ocean, Jonathan replied, wrapping his arms around his wife and daughter. Like I have my whole life ahead of me to spend with my family. That evening they celebrated with a quiet dinner at home, just the 3 of them. Grace seemed to sense the joy and relief in the air, babbling happily and reaching for her parents with her tiny hands. I have something to tell you, Jonathan said as they sat together on the couch after putting Grace to bed. What is it? Nadia asked, curling up against his side. I've been thinking about the Foundation and about our future, Jonathan said. Now that I'm completely healthy, I want to dedicate my life to expanding what we're doing. I want to find every healer in the world and bring them together. I want to build healing centers in every major city. I want to change medicine forever. That sounds amazing, Nadia said. But also huge. Are you sure you're ready for something that big? With you as my partner? I'm ready for anything, Jonathan replied, kissing the top of her head. We've already proven that love and healing can work miracles. Now let's see what we can do for the rest of the world. As they sat there planning their future, baby Grace sleeping peacefully in the next room, Nadia felt a completeness that went beyond anything she had ever imagined. Her husband was healthy, her daughter was perfect, her gift was stronger than ever, and they had the resources and determination to help countless other people. "I love our life," she told Jonathan as they headed to bed. "I love our life too," he agreed. "And I love that we're just getting started." That night, Nadia dreamed of healing centers around the world, of children growing up healthy and strong, of families who never had to face the fear and heartbreak of serious illness. She dreamed of a future where love and healing could overcome any obstacle. And when she woke up the next morning to find Jonathan playing with Grace in their bed, both of them laughing and glowing with health and happiness, she knew that all of her dreams were about to come true. 5 years later, the Morrison Healing Foundation had grown into a global network of healing centers in 12 countries. Nadia and Jonathan had discovered and trained 47 individuals with various healing abilities, creating the world's first comprehensive alternative medicine program that actually worked. Their daughter Grace, now 5 years old, was a remarkable little girl who could heal minor injuries with a touch and had an uncanny ability to sense when people were sad or scared. She spent her afternoons at the Foundation's Children's Center, playing with young patients and unconsciously helping them feel better just by being herself. But the most exciting development was the newest addition to their family. "Mama, when is baby brother coming?" Grace asked for the 10th time that morning as Nadia tried to get comfortable on the couch. At 8 months pregnant, everything was becoming more difficult. "Soon, sweetheart," Nadia replied, rubbing her very round belly. "Maybe in the next few weeks." Jonathan walked into the living room carrying 2 cups of tea and sat down beside his wife. "How are you feeling today?" "Like I'm carrying a future linebacker," Nadia said with a laugh. "This baby is much more active than Grace ever was." "Maybe he's eager to start healing people too," Jonathan suggested, placing his hand on Nadia's belly. Immediately, they felt the baby calm down and settle into a more comfortable position. "Your daddy has a point," Nadia said to her unborn son. "You do seem to respond to the healing energy." Over the past few months, they had noticed that the baby seemed to be affected by the healing work Nadia did. When she worked with patients, the baby would become more active, as if he was participating in the healing process from inside the womb. "Dr. Park thinks he might have even stronger abilities than Grace," Jonathan said. "She's never seen a fetus respond to healing energy the way he does." The sound of the front door opening interrupted their conversation, and Elena's voice called out from the entryway. "Nadia? Jonathan? Are you ready for the big announcement?" Elena had become like a sister to Nadia over the years, and today she was helping them reveal some exciting news to their foundation team and the media. "We're ready," Nadia called back, struggling to get up from the couch. Jonathan and Grace both rushed to help her. An hour later, they were standing in the main conference room of the Morrison Foundation, surrounded by their team of healers, doctors, researchers, and administrators. Representatives from medical journals and news organizations were also present, along with government officials from several countries who had been working with the foundation to establish healing centers worldwide. "Thank you all for being here today," Jonathan began, standing at the podium with Nadia beside him. 5 years ago, my wife saved my life in a way that seemed impossible. Today we want to share with you how that impossible thing has grown into something that's changing the world." He gestured to a large screen behind them, which displayed a world map dotted with locations of their healing centers. The Morrison Foundation now operates healing centers in 43 cities across 6 continents. Our team of trained healers has helped over 10,000 patients recover from conditions that traditional medicine couldn't cure. We've documented and published research on healing abilities in peer-reviewed medical journals, and we've trained doctors from around the world to work with alternative healing methods. The audience applauded, but Jonathan held up his hand to indicate he wasn't finished. "But today we're announcing something even bigger," he continued. "Thanks to a generous donation from the Morrison Family Trust, we're establishing the Global Institute for Healing Arts. This will be a full university program where people with healing abilities can receive formal training, where doctors can learn to integrate healing practices with traditional medicine, and where researchers can study the science behind these extraordinary gifts." The applause was thunderous, but Nadia stepped forward to add her own announcement. "We're also excited to announce that the Institute's first class will include our daughter Grace when she turns 18, Nadia said, smiling down at her little girl. "She's already showing remarkable abilities, and we want to make sure she has the training and support she needs to use her gift responsibly." Grace beamed up at her parents, clearly proud to be part of their important work. "And finally," Jonathan said, taking Nadia's hand, We have some personal news to share. In a few weeks, we'll be welcoming our son into the world. Based on what we've observed during the pregnancy, we believe he may have healing abilities that are even stronger than what we've seen before. We don't know what the future holds, Nadia added, but we're committed to using our gifts and our resources to help as many people as possible. We believe that healing is possible for everyone, and that love is the most powerful medicine of all. After the press conference, the family returned home for a quiet dinner together. Grace chattered excitedly about the baby brother she would soon meet, while Nadia and Jonathan reflected on how much their lives had changed since that rainy night when they first met. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped to help me that night?" Jonathan asked as they sat on their balcony watching the sunset. "Never," Nadia replied without hesitation. "I think we were meant to find each other. I think everything that's happened since then was supposed to happen." "Even the hard parts?" Jonathan asked. "The exhaustion, the pressure, the constant demand for help?" "Especially the hard parts," Nadia said. "Those challenges made us stronger and helped us build something bigger than ourselves. I can't imagine doing this work without you as my partner." Jonathan squeezed her hand, and the familiar warm healing energy flowed between them. But now it felt different than it had in the early days. It felt like home. Like family. Like a love that had grown into something that could heal not just their own hearts, but the hearts of thousands of people around the world. 3 weeks later, baby David Jonathan Morrison was born, and just as they had predicted, his healing abilities were remarkable. Within hours of his birth, he had somehow helped a premature baby in the NICU stabilize, and the nurses reported that his presence seemed to calm every infant in the nursery. "He's going to be something special," Dr. Park said as she examined the newborn. "His healing energy is different from yours and Grace's. Stronger but also more focused. I think he's going to be able to help people in ways we haven't even imagined yet." As Nadia held her son for the first time, with Jonathan and Grace gathered around them, she felt a love so powerful it seemed to fill the entire room with golden light. This was their family. This was their purpose. This was the life they had built together through love, determination, and the miracle of healing. "Welcome to the world, little healer," she whispered to David. "You're going to help so many people." "We all are," Jonathan added, kissing his wife and touching his son's tiny hand. "We're going to heal the world, one person at a time." And as the Morrison family sat together in that hospital room, surrounded by love and hope and infinite possibility, the healing energy that flowed between them seemed to reach out beyond the walls and into the world, touching lives and bringing hope to everyone who needed it most. Their love story had become something bigger than romance. It had become a mission to heal the world. And they were just getting started.